Great, excellent. So we're going to move on to the next panel. I have Paul Bauer, CEO, founder, GAI Insights. I have Joan, Associate Chief Medical Officer, Boston Children's Hospital. I have Thomas Ramos, CPO, Graphite, and I have Venkat Vidam, Head of Gen AI and Front Office Analytics at Manulife. We are missing one of our panels. Hopefully you'll join us on stage, but otherwise, I'll hand it over to Paul to take us through the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Bauer. I'm with the GAI Insights, and we're a research firm, and really excited about this panel because we're going to talk a little more about the realities of actually adopting this technology. So we have panelists who are on the company or the buying side, and we have one panelist who's on the vendor side selling into it. So to start, I'd like to ask each person to take 3 minutes, share your company, and what you see are the biggest challenges on adoption.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. First of all, sorry, my voice is a bit rough. I am recovering from a flu from last week.
Oh.
But yeah, my name is Venkat Vidam. I'm with Manulife Investment Management. We're an insurance company, but also have an asset management arm. And my responsibility is driving AI, more specifically generative AI adoption across the business. Thinking about...
And remind people, 2 employees? How many employees are?
Oh, yeah. It's the largest company, 10,000 plus employees. We're a global company, primarily based out of Canada, but we also have offices in the US and more than 10 countries in Asia. So we are a global business. And then when we look at the solution space, we're not looking at US or Canada, we're looking at solution space that's applicable across this broad distribution.
Good.
In terms of generative AI adoption, we feel like we're playing a catch-up, but we're pretty close to the state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technologies. I think your question was the challenges that we see. If I think about challenges, thinking of it at 2 levels. Firstly, how do you enable individuals or employees to be successful in generative AI adoption? And the primary challenge there I see is the skills gap. The gap is there, it's widening. So how do you make sure we have the correct infrastructure, correct tools, and correct processes around to make sure the employees can skill up on their own, but also have a program for us to drive that adoption.
And do all employees have access to a secure employee chatbot, or
yeah.
Most of them do? Yeah.
In two ways. We have an internal version of ChatGPT that we call Chat MFC. So that's available to all employees. But we also have a good deep partnership with Microsoft. So as part of that, we have deployed the Microsoft terminology is a bit vague. They call everything Copilot, but we have a version of Copilot that's available for everyone that can do a web search and generate more topical responses. So both are available to all the employees. And also for the developer community, we have the GitHub Copilot available for all of our developers to access, to increase efficiency in product. So that's how we're tackling the skills gap on the individual level. But the other challenge that we're tackling, and it's a kind of slow-moving problem, is how do we re-engineer the processes to actually embed AI into the workflow. So it's not about giving tools to employees and ask them to figure out how you increase efficiency. It's also top-down. How do you think about the structure of the organization 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, and where can we design the organization to maximize the value we can drive from AI adoption?
Yeah, and so we do a lot of research with companies, and I think maybe less than 10% of companies have full employee access to secure employee chatbots. That's really impressive. Yeah. Joan, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Paul. I'm Joan LaRovere. I'm firstly a clinician in cardiac intensive care at Boston Children's, and I'm now interim chief medical officer there. So I've had the privilege of being engaged in our AI adoption at Boston Children's. I'm also co-founder and president of Virtue Foundation, so created an AI platform for the global health philanthropy marketplace. So it's been interesting applying these into different domains. So many of you, I'm sure in the room, know Boston Children's. It's one of the leading children's hospitals in the world, very large organization. We've been very lucky in that we have had our IDHA, our own innovation hub, particularly under John Brownstein, Tim Driscoll, Ken Mandel. So we've been forward thinking, I think, in the AI space. We had Boston GPT up behind a firewall in May of 2025.
Wow. Wow.
So we really have embraced the embedding of this, but that doesn't mean there's not tremendous challenges. I think the first piece is thinking about where you're applying it. Much easier to start thinking about it in the financial reimbursements, prior auth, things that are streamlining those workflows in operations. And then finally, thinking about it within the clinical setting and how we're going to utilize that in terms of patient care. But obviously, that is a slower process with the risk involved. I think from that perspective, the biggest issues, well, I guess one thing to say, we've just brought in an Epic integration. So we've brought in a new EHR platform to help enable all of our other tech stack. So it's, in some ways, we're very much ahead, but it's also early days. I think it's important having the senior executive sponsors who actually can understand this, right, is very important. There's always going to be the innovators on the ground, and then how do you get the middle to help enable? And I think there's a lot, we're in a high education phase, like really educating people on what these tools can do. And rather than just iterating on S-curves, which I think is a lot of what we've done, it's how do you then get to the point of saying, here's the problem we're going to solve, as opposed to here's our current workflow or our current process. Right. And how do we think about the optimal and the ideal for that? So it's very much a work in progress and very much a transition time. And then on the Virtue Foundation front, we've used Gen AI to create mini knowledge graphs around all the healthcare facilities and healthcare NGOs in 72 low and middle income countries. And that's been fascinating to kind of use AI to tackle the problem from the start and kind of start from nowhere and build up, as opposed to in a legacy system and how are you going to think about that transition.
Is it easier in a NewCo or?
Yes, I mean, yes and no. It is easier in a NewCo in some ways because you can just keep go. But it's a different balance. Yeah. And then how are you going to then embed that into the rest of how that work functions?
Right. So Tomas, tell us about your innovative product and what you guys see in your customers.
Of course. Thank you for having us as well. My name's Tomas. I run a company called Graphite. Graphite's an AI code review platform. We help software developers write software by automatically finding bugs in their code. We, at this point, have the privilege of working with some of the fastest and most advanced organizations on the planet. We support companies like Shopify, Snowflake, and Datadog. And we've probably helped about 1,000+ companies now go through their AI transformations, both on two levels. One is getting the company to be comfortable with the idea of AI, right? So how do we say, like, no, this product actually works? I think there's a lot of skepticism around, well, does it hallucinate? Is it going to find real things? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth the lift? Is it worth the change? And then secondly, we are adopted on an engineer by engineer basis. And so not only do we have to convince the companies, we then help drive transformation within those companies, going to individual engineers and saying, okay, what do we need to do in order to educate people? And so we've had our fair share of lunch and learns. We've had our fair share of writing documentation, writing change, demonstrating it to people, and getting over those hurdles. I think one of the things that we get to see as a vendor is this process not just once, but over many times and across many different types of organizations, both the very small organizations. I think the smallest one that uses us is 2 people, and very large organizations, the largest being in the high thousands. I don't think we've gotten to tens of thousands just yet.
We see so much innovation on the tool side. Oh, here's Sesame, here's DeepSeek, here's this technology, and it's breathtakingly better, yet we're still trying to solve a problem. How have you guys thought about, in New England, we call it the whale watching problem. You're on one side of the boat, there's a whale, everyone goes over there. Here's a tool that does image creation. Oh my God, here comes this other tool for image tools creation. No, this, how do you guys think about it in Manulife? Is it you pick one tool, you stay with it? Or how do you know when to switch, or always be experimenting, roll out with multiple tools?
There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But
that's an honest answer.
what work is do both, right? Have certain teams that are more focused on not exactly R&D, but more practical applications of, evolving technologies,
Yeah.
but also have a dedicated focus on planned execution.
Yeah.
So if you say chat, MFC, we're going to implement, DeepSeek comes up, that's fine, let it be, but we'll stay with OpenAI, implement chat, MFC, drive adoption across board, as an example. But so we have use cases and business cases mapped out that we want to tackle for this year, next year.
Yeah.
So wherever the technology goes, we'll still execute that. But at the same time, we don't want to lose out on the skills gap. So
If I'm one of 1,000 employees and I want to use a new tool, what's the process like? Can I just go use it?
Huh.
Shadow IT might be a problem in some company. How do you guys handle that and think about that problem?
those,
I know that's also a challenge.
having been accused of shadow IT multiple times across my career,
Okay, yes.
it's a very personal question for me.
Okay.
First of all, I feel like shadow IT is not a problem. It's more of an opportunity.
Yeah.
The reason shadow IT exists is because the employees are not getting the tools they need that improve their experience through the regular technology.
And for shadow IT, this would be an employee at a company using a tool, started using that the tool itself wasn't approved by the IT organization.
And it also manifests in a slightly more structured fashion where there is a bunch of engineers or developers who are servicing a small set of user base that are not technically part of the technology organization. And we have done that, built that, partly because the technology organization couldn't keep up. And one of the things that has worked for us to take this opportunity of existing shadow IT, because the reason why the shadow IT works is the people who are implementing those tools know the business problems very well and have the flexibility, agility to adopt new technologies. And so we use that as an opportunity. My boss, Ravi, is here. So what he had done is build an operating model around it for us to have an opportunity to do a prototype to pilot environment in shadow IT, but have a governance process to take what works in the shadow IT and make it real.
That's interesting. So you're actually looking for those nodes in the organization, embracing them so they come forward, you get visibility. Then rather than keeping a hidden shadow IT.
Bring it out into light.
Joe, how do you guys think about the
I would say it's very similar in the sense of with everything changing so fast, I think the days of being able to have a shadow IT, I think it's hard to do that anymore. In the sense of your organization doesn't really want that so much anymore. But the same idea, having a process to bring forward what is the problem you're trying to solve, and how do we think about within what we have, we solve it, or do we need to think about other vendors or internal builds? And we've created the data and AI governance infrastructure. I think that's a really important piece for any organization at this point. And then thinking about that, what you need in your tech stack to actually solve the problems your organization needs to solve. And you need that oversight. And then thinking about it from the foundation's perspective, I think we've been able to move fairly nimbly because you're smaller and you can start thinking about bringing in the right partners to build what you need to build. But if you're doing it across a large organization with 10,000 employees, you need to have more oversight over it. In a smaller organization, you can see it all right in front of you.
One of the things we see a lot is I call them Gen AI enthusiasts. It's typically a mid-level person who's super enthusiastic about it. They see the future, they see the career advancement, yet they're sitting in an organization that they may care a lot about, but they feel or is actually going quite slow. How do I get my management team to go faster? What suggestions on that, or what should that enthusiast do, or how do they make the case for embracing quicker?
Well, I think you need to enable those people because they're the ones who are going to solve your organizational problems. So what we've tried to do is create the infrastructure for them to bring that forward. And we should always think about the advancement of the organization and the advancement of the individual because it's motivating to people. You don't want to kill people's motivation. So we've tried to create the overall data governance structure, AI infrastructure, but a process for things to float forward if this is what I want to do. And then you gain access to the tools to do it. And then you go do it. So I think it's creating the infrastructures to enable it where you actually also have oversight over it so something doesn't go too rogue.
Yes. So, Martha, I suspect you're probably very interested in those early adopter coders, right? How do you find them? What do they look like? Do they put their hands up? Do they left-handed or? Yeah.
One of my favorite graphs we have in the office is whenever we go into an organization, we can actually map sort of the social network of developers that talk to each other.
Yeah.
One of the artifacts of working in development. And then you can see where it's adopted, and it always looks like it starts at a node and it spreads out from there. How do I identify it? They usually reach out to us. So I think
So you're getting pulled. They're already heat-seeking, looking for you.
We've seen a big sort of like pull for AI tools recently, especially from some of these more advanced software engineering organizations, where some developer raises their hand and says like, yeah, no, I want that tool, or even worse, like immediately starts using us. Maybe better for us, worse for the company. I think shadow IT is going to exist. I think that's a reality. I think what Joan said is spot on. It's around creating the structure such that it can happen safely. I think what you're trading off against is security. And so if your employees are bringing in tools, let's take an extreme, that have access to customer data or personal health information, that's bad. If they're using AI tools to make restaurant reservations for a meeting they have at noon, probably doesn't matter. Yeah. And so somewhere in that spectrum you exist, and I think and probably you actually exist at many levels, being able to identify what is at which level is a conversation we have all the time around, well, hey, like we don't touch customer data, so that's actually pretty good. We do touch source code, so that might be slightly more privileged. Yeah. Where do we exist, and what's the right level for that decision to be made? Does it need to be made all the way at the top? Perhaps not if an org's gonna use it. Does it need to be made all the way at the bottom? Perhaps like a manager or team is the right place for us to start. And then we try to sort of insert ourselves there.
Curious how you guys think, if there's a population of employees, I've seen, 5% of the early adopters, they're gone. There's another 20, 30% are always skeptics. There's the middle 40% that might. How do we get that whole group to move faster? Do we just wait? Is it a waiting thing? Is it just time? You have to just put it in the oven, bake it, or are there things you can accelerate?
I think you can accelerate it. And this was actually, I was thinking as you were speaking, something I forgot to mention. One is we're doing things around the organization to just educate the organization about what these new capabilities are. And then the other thing that's happened is we've created a learning community. So allow people to also self-identify and then coalesce. So that then you get more sharing and it's more empowerment at an individual level. I think that can really help as well. Because in the end, the tech piece is really important, but you also need the subject matter expert, and you need them both to somehow speak each other's language. Yeah. So creating the environments where there is more of that crosstalk, I think helps you to go further faster. Because the subject matter expert knows the problem. Yeah. They don't know exactly how to use the AI tools to solve the problem, but then you have that core team that can work with them to do so.
So we're kind of painting a picture here a little bit about, let's make sure it's safe, but shadow IT is encouraged a little bit, at least experiment, make sure we know what kind of data we're using here. Let's make sure they get the support in a learning group. Yeah.
I was about to say, so we've done a ton of research on this because it very materially impacts our business. The crossing the chasm, which is I think what you're referring to, like you have these early adopters and then this majority and then these laggards.
Explain what crossing the chasm is. Some of the
there's this book, if you've never read it, Crossing the Chasm. It basically says you can go ahead, you have a bell curve, and on the far left you have these early adopters who are going to just love to try new tools, and they'll try almost any new tool. And then you have a chasm, and then you have the majority. That's where most people live under the bell curve, and they use what works for them, and if it's proven to them that it works to them and they've seen evidence, that's great. And then you have the laggards that they don't like change, right? And in software engineering, the one that always comes out to me, we have some tools that were built in the 70s that people still hold on to, and they're like, there's clearly better alternatives, and they're like, you can try this for my cold dead hands, and that's real, it exists. I think for us, having done a lot of research, the best predictor of whether someone will use Graphite, that's our tool, is whether the person next to them uses Graphite. That is the strongest predictor we have. And so one of the things that we've done to help accelerate the curve is we love to do lunch and learns. Or we get this question all the time from organizations, how will people adopt you? And we're like, it's going to be very easy. We're going to have a lunch session. We're going to teach people how to use the tool. And out of that lunch session, probably 10 to 20% of the room is going to walk out and use a tool. But that's fine, because what I know is that over the next month, everyone next to them is going to use it. And then everyone next to them is going to use it. And then we'll spread to the full organization over the next about 45 days. And so for us, it's around just planting those seeds sort of broadly such that it can spread faster.
It's really, so make sure I'm listening well. So that's AI adoption acceleration through peer education, through, it's not a carrot or a stick. It's really just, hey, you're my trusted peer and you're using it and I'm osmosis picking up on that. Is that?
Yeah. The one thing that I realized is previously this would have been part of what would be called a change management position.
Yeah.
But previous technology adoption curves had enough time for you to plan on change management.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's no planning.
Yeah, exactly. So what works is the common theme between what John and Thomas was mentioning is learning. Right? So I think the change management needs to be replaced with what would be called continuous learning.
Yeah.
And then that it's upon individuals to figure out how to learn. But then on the organization side, it's important to figure out facilitating those, having those hubs for exchange of knowledge, communities where they can exchange knowledge, and then be incentivized to drive the broader adoption.
We've heard a lot about the importance of education. We need to educate. What works there? Do we send them a link to YouTube video? Do we got to send them to MIT classes? Is it?
I think one of the best things is exactly what you said, is bringing people together and sharing either what they've done, showcasing what they've done, testing different things, creating that what we call a learning community.
Yeah.
I think you can supplement with other things. You can send videos, or you can send to MIT classes, or you can send teams to something together. But I think the internal, here it is in your workflow, here's how I solved this problem, here's how you might try what we just used over here in this part of the organization. I think that
so it's subject matter experts in the company, people I know, language that I know, and then a little bit of the AI tool. It's not going just all about the AI tool and having a supplement with the...
Yeah, and the folks who are doing the AI tool work don't always understand the problem. I see this so many times. We'll be working on something, they're like, great, we did it. I was like, well, no, you created an algorithm, but that doesn't do what I need it to do.
Yeah.
Here's how we need it to go.
Yeah.
And I think that it's that together is really important.
I think one missing element here is there's some part of it which is education. I think there's some part of it which is belief. For a lot of people, one of the things that we see is I can stand on the stage and be like, the software works. It will literally find bugs in your code. You will ship fewer bugs to production. Your users will be happier. And some of you believe me. Some of you don't. And I think it's much easier to build belief when the person next to you is like, no, really, it works. Or when you sit in a room with someone and they show it to you and you can ask your questions, you can be like, but try that. Well, that works too. And so for me, it's there's a portion of it which is education. I think that's easier to solve. I think you can send YouTube videos, you can send docs, I can describe how the product works in 400 words. That's not the hard part to me. The hard part is getting someone to believe that what wasn't possible 3 years ago is now very, very possible and actually not that hard. And I think that's sort of where we see the delta.
Well, a lot of the organizations we see, there's a pocket that's non-trivial that is fearful of change. If I adopt it, I'm going to lose budget here. We're going into recession here. If I get too automated here, I'm putting my family's livelihood on. Yeah. We've got a couple war stories where projects were sabotaged because it was messaged that this is what's the right message? What is a good messaging for how people think about it? I mean, there is a productivity reality that a lot of CFOs are pushing. We are looking at a recession. How do we talk honestly about to our workforces about this technology?
Yeah, I think it's feels like what you're saying. It feels like you're listening to some of our calls.
Oh, not to say.
No, because it's a real problem.
It's very real. Yeah.
And the only way to solve that is for there to be a change organization, a transformation organization that has accountability at the chief executive level that's driving the messaging.
Yeah.
And has representation from all parts of the leadership, so that the messaging of importance and the inevitability of the need to adopt AI is communicated top down. And then at the same time, we are incentivizing bottom up for folks to adopt continuous learning approaches. So hopefully those two converge.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. One of the things we've seen a lot is helping to employees understand the benefits to them. It's enhancing their career.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to help their kids more with it. You're going to help the company survive because our competitors are using this.
I think it is taking the fear out, but I mean, I think it is real in some organizations that people can see that this is about losing their jobs. I think I'm very fortunate. I work in an organization that's incredibly focused on its employees, but trying to build these things in a way that it enhances people's career and allows them to progress is key to it. But that's an organizational culture piece, and different organizations are in different places, I think, on that.
So we'll finish up. So great advice here. So for people early on your journey here, you can accelerate 2 to 3 years your adoption of your organization by instilling the thing here. So it's really helpful. So help me to thank the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Paul, thank you to the panel. Just one sec. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody has a question? You want to step up? You have a question?
Okay, Max. This is a question specifically for Tomas. Because of the work that you're doing, I'm really intrigued about how you accomplish this level of success actually at that executive level. Do you have stories?
Wait, sorry, I think I missed that question. Neeson, how do you accomplish
Adoption.
Adoption.
And adoption at the executive.
At the executive level, yeah.
So to repeat the question back, how do we accomplish adoption at the executive level?
Yeah, I think you avoid it, right?
Well, no, not entirely, actually. It really, really depends on what organization we're selling to. So at some organizations, we've seen the executives love AI, are coming to us, and they're telling us, like, no, we want to adopt a tool like this. How do we do that? At some organizations, they're like, I'm more skeptical, but some senior directors, some senior VP, et cetera, they care, and I don't care what they do in their organization. I trust them. And so for us, it's around finding the level of the organization where we're going to be able to both have trust and where we're going to be able to have trust and also have impact. And so for us, when we see a team of, call it 2 people that's like, I want to adopt you, I'm like, let's make that slightly larger. Even when actually full organizations come to us, we're like, well, let's actually scope this down maybe to a part of the organization that we can try first, make sure that it works, and then go back up. But it's for yourself, it's knowing what is the scale that's right to try and to demonstrate impact.
I think we'll get one last one. Go ahead, please.
Hi there. My name's Eden. I am a behavioral scientist, and I'm wondering if any of you in the work that you've done have consulted with behavioral scientists, because adoption ultimately is behavior change. And so much of what you said, having people, having the social proof, authority bias, status quo bias, those are all well-known biases in human behavior. So wondering, and for everyone here, how is behavioral science being considered in these initiatives?
I'm sorry, the question is, what are the data science teams doing for?
Behavioral science.
Behavioral science. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fully a part of any change management that you don't think about those things. And if you don't think about those things, it's sort of at your peril. I think it's very much an important piece. And at a leadership level, I think that is definitely part of what you think about and thinking about how to create the adoptions.
I mean, I think the one thing I see, we don't need more AI technology right now. We need more change management.
Yes.
Excellence. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
One last comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a partnership with the behavioral economics study group in a university in Toronto. And I think we also ran a 6-month-long exercise with HBS as part of figuring out what is the behavioral change that we need to drive for participant experience on our retirement platform. So it's something that we constantly think about it, but it's more so looking at how we affect our customer experience.
Panelists, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for leading the panel. Thank you, John.